get to talk to Judith Aston. I'm so excited. I've been wanting this interview for a long time, so here we are. I just want to get an overview of this work that has changed my life so much and has benefited me in so many ways. And I want to tell more people about it. Um, Judith, my mentor, tell us about this beautiful work you've created, Aston Kinetics.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your involvement all these years, your excitement that continues to feed you and your clients with enthusiasm for learning. You're very good at that, Michelle. So thank you for inviting me. I would say the summary of this work or the headers, the number one thing would be in assessment, being able to see the body. Now, this is not just reading the report that says this was broken, this is the treatment, et cetera, et cetera. This is actually looking at the whole body and how all the parts relate to each other. Does that rotation, internal rotation of the left shoulder, could that be influencing the right internal rotation of the hip? So it's like starting to be able to add to your assessment information by assessing the visual pattern. The visual pattern in stance, more in stillness or stationary balance, and also being able to assess in movement, as well as advanced activities like an advanced swimming competitor, athlete, in running, an Olympic athlete, a person healing from a very bad break of their right leg and how that has influenced and compromised them. Being able to see what's going on, see how it changes, and design movement bodywork patterns for that person to help neutralize. So seeing is number one. Movement is probably number two, in the sense of having ideas to teach movement that can easily be understood and felt, so that the client, the student in your fitness class, the client on your table can learn not only how to sustain the work that you've facilitated, but be able to do their own treatment, to reset their body into neutral, to have a difficult conversation and feel the anxiety in their stomach and the lack of full breathing in their chest and what that is making them feel like. And being able to add this simple little exercise that we teach that brings the whole body into congruent movement, simultaneous movement, to reset themselves. And they go, oh, I don't have to go there. I can go there in my mind and recreate the tension, or I can move forward from now. So being able to learn these simple little movements, designs, and sometimes they get much more advanced as the student gets much more advanced in their questioning. Listen, I'm always going to have a shorter leg. How would you teach me to teach this Pilates? Oh, let me show you. So the second part is teaching movement, training people in how to discern what movements can be improved how. The third case of focus here would be focusing on the area of body work. A lot of people are familiar with body work. These days, I'm so happy through these last few decades, it's become even more popular again. And so people are getting massage and they are interested in getting body work for improvement and working with their alignment and working with their range of motion increasing. And you as a physical therapist have been teaching this kind of work, I mean, for facilitating the patient for so long. What has happened in how I design things or materials for classes has to do with what I see can be addressed and can be addressed if we change something slightly, how to go deeper into the body with less pain, how to affect the osseous connection with connective tissue, how to teach people how to design a bodywork session that works with the patterning compromise, but balances it through the whole body, and then goes back to the movement to teach people how to use that new space. Because when that person picks up their foot and leans back to start walking, they're in their old pattern. But when the body changes and they can use a new mat to lean into gravity and walk, and they say, oh, I'm not hitting my heels so hard. What is this about? I'm not hitting my heels because my heel always hurts on the right foot. And you go, that's because the empowerment that happens when people not only study this work, but they continue to dive in to investigate, they learn so much more every time they do a session. And so does the client.
Yeah.
The next piece is that fitness, and I taught at a college for so many years and designed programs for the athletic department, the theater department. They wanted me to create a dance department, etc. So I was involved in that. And fitness is so important to the human body. And some people think that unless they do competitive exercise, they're not doing enough for their body. If they're not enrolled in a competition this month, they're not doing enough. And that is fine if that's their role. But when people do exercise or many fitness things, their Pilates, their yoga, their running, their weight training in the weight room, their all of these different things that they do. When they have learned about their body and their short leg, they learn techniques for being on that bike for 30 minutes at a certain pace. They learn about running and how to negotiate the asymmetry. They learn how to apply some of the fitness designs, and these designs, oh my goodness, I have so many classes. Fitness for seniors, fitness for loosening, fitness classes for toning, fitness classes for several sports, applying to yoga, to Pilates, etc. So toning and loosening and all of the techniques from the movement work that we teach can empower the client or the student of exercise to apply uniquely to them. And as they apply these concepts, their body improves to a better neutral available for now. And then they can change. They don't have to do it to that same amount. They don't have to think about a little more ground reaction force on their right leg. They actually, hey, my leg is not as short on the right now that I've unspiraled the tension and put in a newer pattern, my leg is actually longer. And maybe we as therapists have helped point that out by measurement or by watching them or filming them. People spend so much time at the computer these days, and they're sitting there often on a low seat in a slight, quote unquote, relaxed position that is also slightly slumped. So the front is shorter than the back, and the person is working at this angle, sometimes leaning forward to get to the keyboard. So they spend 6 to 8 hours that day in that pattern, which shortens the chest, internally rotates the shoulders, compresses into the abdomen, rolls the pelvis back, so on and so forth. And when we teach people about the ergonomics, and they do a training in one of our classes about ergonomics, they feel, they realize, and they remember, wait a minute, this takes me seconds to change my setup from this chair doing this to me and the position of my computer doing this to me, because I'm no longer willing to trade 8 hours of effort in a negative way to my body, even though it's the way I make my income. Now that I have the skill sets, I can have maybe 25% improvement early on. And the more I learn and the more I change, it keeps improving so that people can keep saying to that client, okay, what are you doing that's making you look younger? Well, I just happen to be seeing this therapist in Aston Kinetics, and I'm learning so much. And sometimes our Aston Kinetics practitioners teach these classes for movement, for exercise, for ergonomics, and of course, all of our basic course trainings for professionals as well. That's those 5 areas of focus of what we consider to be part of the Aston Kinetics paradigm.
Wow, that was amazing. I loved how you take the whole paradigm and seamlessly weave all the parts together. And the benefits of doing that, you really emphasize that idea of the client, whether they're a practitioner client or a client of the practitioner, gets to have more participation in the healing process.
Yeah.
And I think people are looking for what to do, not just who to see. And I think you highlighted some of the benefits of that, right? Someone might be more empowered to feel more comfortable and not tolerate discomfort in their body and know what to do about it. The ergonomics and how the ergonomics just set you up for success. Your movement technique and sequences are, we teach them in a way that gives people that boost, right? In feeling successful. And I want to talk a little bit more about the benefits, of studying Aston Kinetics.
One of the key components is that the discoveries I had about a more neutral alignment are not what is standard at the 90-degree angle that the body is vertical to the floor. And so it changes the math of what we use, changes everything.
Right.
And it's only by a few degrees. It changes everything in the body for the body usage. So one of the things that happened way back in the 70s, early 70s, I met Dr. Ida Rolf, and I went there for a session. But at the end of the session, she said, I understand you teach movement and you train people in techniques. And I said, yes. She said, well, can you create the program for me? And I said, sure. And so 1968, that was 1968. And so I took the training and I graduated in February 69. And as I started working with people, and I would leave the room to get something, where I was training people in the professionals in the class that were training with Dr. Rob, and I would walk into the room and people would go into a good posture, which was effortful. And I'd say, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot something. I'll be right back. So I'd go out, I'd count a few seconds, I'd walk back in, and they'd go into this posture again. And I wonder, what is it about holding posture? And I remembered I had it in college. It was teaching you about a sky hook. It was teaching you to lift yourself from your head and that lifted the chest and so on and so forth. And I kept thinking and thinking about this. And it just seemed that when we lift with the head, it's effortful. Mm-hmm. But if we go to the other end of the body and we push with the feet, the push off the feet gradually gets right up to the top of the head. So I realized, so if we push off the ground and it lengthens us, we can even inhale on that up length. And we get to the top where we run out of the ground force and we relax, it allows us to settle down from the top to the ground. This was life-changing in terms of not only the position of being a few degrees forward, which would include the toes and more of the ball of the foot, but it allows this dynamic undulation of gravity to meet ground reaction force and ground reaction force coming off the earth to support us. So now this is pretty exciting emotionally and psychologically. We have a friend called ground reaction force that helps us balance on this planet, but not done simultaneously. If you just stand for a moment and do this with me, if you just stand for a moment, I'm just going to stand so you have the idea of standing, and lift yourself up with the top of your head. Yeah, feel the effort that does. Now, exhale and relax and feel your body settle down into your feet. And as it settles down into your feet, soften your knees. Push down on your feet. That'll straighten the knees. You start to get this lift through the hip joint, the torso, the neck, the head. Inhale goes to the top of the head. When you run out of room, allow the settlement. This dynamic undulation of these support systems of gravity holding us on the planet and ground reaction force helping us lift off the planet. I was so surprised when two people that were in, they build buildings, and they were taking a class that I was teaching, and they came running up to me at the end and they said, "We're engineers. We know our buildings are only held up by GRF." I'm so glad you're teaching it to our choir, because we know how important it is. And it was so precious at the moment. When people come training, they learn about the theory of this work and how it's applied. They learn about touch. They learn about many types of touch. What are you reading? And in our body work, really, as soon as we get into our basic, not the introductory classes, but the basic classes, we start teaching people how to palpate, how to make a chart, how to have the palpation and the chart actually design the session, the client's reading of their body. Yes? So we're palpating that feels tight. Next to, on the other side, the same place, almost hypotone, too loose. I wonder how that happens. The weight is shifted all the way over on this side when they stand. They cross their opposite leg over the same overly tight leg all day long while they work at the computer, and so on. And we start discovering these things from our clients that become ways to teach them to become educated to play with that at work. And they say, "My hip didn't hurt after work."
Right.
And we often joke, give yourself a tip for that.
Exactly. So the benefit of having these tools in movement and body work and the assessment in particular gives us those ways of communicating with our clients that actually come from them. They get to participate, and that honestly is a kind of a training. We have to train them to actually participate. Oh, do your thing. It's like, well, yeah, but I also want to know what your thing is. Because and then we can work together on this. And I feel like that cooperation is such a beautiful dance in itself, to be able to really connect with somebody about what their deepest wants are as far as their body. What would they love to have happen, and how do they want to be there? and it takes you in so many different directions that you're never bored. Like, this work has always been so intriguing to me because I'm constantly learning, because people are pretty infinite and every person is different. So even if you've seen 1,000 different people with back pain, they all have their unique story and how
And
they got there.
the sequence to the unraveling is the rest of their story that's contributing to why would that one simple little thing I did, all I did was sneeze. Why did my back go out? Oh, this was coming for a while. And so you begin, we sometimes ask clients to bring, do you have any photographs of you as a child that you could bring that would be interesting to look, and so on. And I just wanted to say that this body sensitivity is not just for adults. I'm thinking of a baby that I worked with. The mother had me work with this baby. And let's see, put the poor baby into such flexion that you could see more double chins than probably the baby really had. But the seat did that. And so I worked with the baby, and the baby became more neutral. And I modified by using the diapers to change the seat and the back a bit. And then I did a little arcing exercise with the baby. And I put the baby into the infant seat, okay? And the baby leans back and goes, and has full rotation, So I gave the baby to the mama and said, could you hold for a moment? I took out the modifications for the math to change. And she put the baby back in, and the baby settled and immediately started to cry. Okay. And I said, I have not said anything to this baby. This baby did this on its own. This
Right,
baby
they knew.
like this. This baby recognized that the double chins with their head resting on the top of their chest and the pelvis being rolled under, and they had less range of movement to move their head right and left. They read it immediately. I've had that happen quite a few times. So it's just so much fun to empower any age with this kind of knowledge. And people say, well, what keeps you working? I mean, don't you think you should be retired by now? Some people are very diplomatic. Judith, when are you retiring? And I say, no, I don't know. Why would I retire? I just love what I do, and I seem to be able to do it. And
Yeah, you are infinite, just like our clients are, and you are so much more creative when you have people to talk to about this. And
yes.
just be able to communicate to whoever is in the room, whoever's in front of you. And I've seen you teach, hundreds of people at the, massage conventions. And I was just, it's so amazing to see how this work is enlivening.
The how you do the what you do makes the difference. I mean, in medical trainings, I mean, I don't know how many thousands of protocols they have to train in to learn, but they are many times assigned that these are the things needed for this, and these are the things needed for this. And this is also helpful and so useful. I mean, absolutely, it's been researched and it shows its success. When people come in and you have the ability and the time to create for them in the moment, not only for the injury, but the application to walking with that injury and still playing their piano or playing on the computer or playing with their child, you start to apply it to this multitude of angles and so on for the interest, as opposed to do this exercise at least 3 times a day. This is just a different way. It isn't I mean, sometimes we might say, if you could do this 3 times a day this week in between now and when I see you next week, it would just be helpful that it would be in there in a deeper way that we could progress. So there are times that you would say things like that. But it's just so fascinating because when people are involved in their own process of healing, and we are facilitators, the opportunities to apply it are endless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're interested. They get so involved in their own healing. They have discoveries and ahas that, bring them forward and actually keep them coming back beyond the resolution of an injury, just because they feel so good in their body. So I would like to talk about the body work, because the movement work is just amazing, but you take the movement work into the body work in a way that's so unique and so thoughtful that it I feel like it helps the palpation be more clear and gives depth to not only looking at the whole person, the whole pattern, but how you do the body work really is the movement work, and how it's so integrated into the form.
Yeah. Yeah. The body usage of the practitioner determines the effect by design, but also by translation of forces. So when the practitioner is, for example, sitting here, I know my head is off the screen, but anyway, they're sitting here and they're over their right hip, leaning and working. Their body isn't set up to support that particular action. And as they learn to use their body in a starting position that feeds from the earth through their body into their hand touching, the other hand touching, and then using the forces of the ground reaction force and releasing into the gravity. Again, this dance between the two forces not only makes you more able to get in more deeply without pressure, without extra strong pressure. You wave through the tissues, but also it allows you to be more accurate. And so the changes happen more quickly to the layer that needs it, not maybe pushing one layer to go to a second layer, go to the third layer, go to the fourth, to work the fifth layer.
Right.
As opposed to the way we might spiral in to get to the fifth or sixth layer, allows us to be able to move and to create a positive shear by degree that matches what's needed.
Right. And that's such a unique, when I first got that, I was just, I felt like the clouds parted, the sun shone down on me.
Okay, everybody, we know that she's very expressive.
Yeah. I'm not exaggerating, because it felt so good in my body. Like, that was the thing that I was like, wow, I'm getting all this change and I'm not having to effort so much in my own self. I had a neck injury right out of PT school, and this was the work that I was looking for many years. And when I found it, like the movement work, the assessment, I'm like, oh wow. But the body work, because I'm a hands-on practitioner, so I'm always wanting to put my hands on people, but I was hurting myself. And that was the thing that I was just floored by. I'm like, oh, I don't need to push through all those layers to get the effect that I'm looking for.
Those of you that are interested in looking at our classes, you could look at the 101 class for learning how to see body patterns, the 201 class for looking at learning how to teach very basic, simple movement designs, and the 301 for starting to learn three-dimensional asymmetrical touch.
I'd just like to take a moment to talk about these individual classes that are prerequisites for your certification program. The 101 is your Aston postural assessment. So that gives us the foundation for seeing the body from this view.
Excuse me, is this the where I'm supposed to hold the book?
It is. It is. This is the workbook.
She told me to bring the book. Yes. So Aston Postural Assessment, this is the newest edition. There's an earlier one. If you already have it, that's good. But the idea of being able to see the body pattern in stationary balance and in movement is so key to being able to facilitate that person in your dance class. I mean, I'm thinking of ballroom dance teachers for some reason at the moment, that they're really trying to get their person to be able to do something, but the person themselves doesn't know that their pattern of their chest is quite down, and that loads the back. So the person that's leading them with their hand on the back is really having to effort more, for example, in terms of being able to facilitate the dance moves. But learning to actually see body patterns, put it together like an overlay of history and a recent overlay of this particular injury. So when people can bring photographs of them a few years ago even, and then looking now at the photograph we take, and then looking at it, a photo as a child, it's a fascinating thing. Not that you have to, by the way, show up for your first session with all these series of photos, but the piece there is that the problem solving in the session we design has to do with the now as it is dictated by the past. So we have to work with the present time and how it's being controlled and shaped by past time. So sometimes the last straw was falling down the stairs. And that, even though they had this pattern before, because of how they landed, the ability to see the body and be able to see the relationships of the individual parts and what those parts are doing that make up the whole pattern by a three-dimensional 360 by 360 view. I remember someone said, "Oh, your course sounds interesting because you teach a 360 view of the body." I said, "No, we teach a 360 by 360 because of the three-dimensionality. So what you see from the front changes from the back. What you see from the right side changes to the left side." So being able to assess is such an important piece for whether you teach movement, exercise, etc. So that's the 101 introduction, and it's really just a 2-day class online, that intro.
There's 102, if you continue to on towards certification, that uses some unique Aston assessment technique that aren't ordinarily taught in the typical postural alignment that you might learn.
Well, and that typical one is often about looking at the body from the front to the back, looking at the body from the right side to the left side, looking at the body from the top to the bottom in our 101 class. In the 102, we add this whole tremendously significant piece, which is dimension. So I can be displaced with my chest back, but my chest up in front. I can be displaced with my chest or trunk leaning back, but my chest, upper chest down and my head forward. All of these things, when you're looking at the cross sections of the segments, they change the pathway of the weight bearing from top to bottom and bottom to top. but they also affect function. So being able to facilitate one's understanding for themselves of dimension and how to keep that dimension, because when I'm able to sustain this fuller dimension of my chest, you know what? I'm not coughing as often. My asthma is reduced in terms of the negative consequences. My swallowing is easier, what have you. As the dimension changes from the usual pattern because of the way we sit and our car seat designs and so on and so forth, in great flexion, the back is wider. The back is wider, you know. And women seem to know this more. Because do you have to take a photograph of my back? Well, yes, I just want to show you. They say, well, that side is much bigger, you know. And I say, keep the faith, keep the faith. So yes, of course, it's structured deeper and we have more support with the glutes and all the things that happen back there that help us out. But the idea that part of the back is taking with it the front, or part of the front is pushing forward and straining the back. So as people start to understand the aperture of a cross section and how much torsion is in that cross section, or at least our practitioners need to understand this.
Right.
There's a simple way of saying that to the client, but I'm just saying that torsion affects the fullness of the translation of forces, of fluids, of the blood, for example, of thought. All of these things change as a body reclaims its fullness. And some people have never had it in their life. They stand up. I have never, ever experienced this before.
They're not taught that. And that's the thing that, you know, one of the other things that I just love about this assessment program is that we do look at, it is truly three-dimensional that we're looking at it, and in so many different ways and in relation from one part to the next and as a whole. And oh, that's just such a beautiful, it's a more complete. I used to be very confused as to what to do when I saw all the tilts and forward head and all the things that I saw. Had just too much information versus I feel this really helps you focus your session, you know, with the other information you're gathering from your clients to have a clarity in what to do next.
Well, and it really takes it out of the need to correct isolated places.
Right.
You know, I used to pose in the correct position for that. Okay, you know, like I've got the sky hook and I've got the, you know, and even in dance classes, you know, there was still this persona expression that we were trained to do for the line of the body. And so you understand that. But we also needed to, in classes, reach and lift up and have the chest up and arch the back and so on and so forth. So there are many ways that it's so freeing to let the body be the way it is and negotiate the way it moves to our advantage, rather than hold your arm like this and swing them like this, or let your knees go straight forward and your foot should go straight forward and so on. And the more I had people come in with rules, I was really pondering. So I have many different ideas about the body's alignment pattern that is good, and how to use it, how to apply it, even when you've had an injury that throws you off. And it seems that the reason I don't seem to have a lot of difficulty in teaching people this is they're the person to evaluate whether it works or not. It's not me saying, now that's how you do it. Now, really, just keep those knees coming straight forward And so that's what the client leaves with, as opposed to, how is this feeling? What is leading you right now? Well, I just do that thing you said. I lean forward and let my knees relax, take me forward. Whatever it is. I mean, that's just one tiny little example of someone I was
Right.
thinking who was
Yeah.
hyperextended at her knees.
Oh yeah, that's a unique situation. And the solutions I feel like that you give have a depth to them that aren't just a rote do this, don't do that. It has a exploration and that participatory coaching, that we learn in the process. So in the fundamentals classes, the 301 class is Aston spiraling massage. And honestly, this was one of my favorite feeling techniques, especially when I first started, because I felt like it had this quality of integration. Some of the benefits of learning the Aston spiraling massage that you feel is crucial to somebody's success in your work, studying your work.
Well, the design of the strokes is how to contour the body area that you're working on. And that has a lot to do with setup, how you place your fingers. What do the fingertips touch first? Does the heel of the hand touch? The sequence of even just how you set up, trying to put your hand on the lateral side of the left lower leg and the medial side. And so how you contour and shape the segment you're going to work with, how you then lean your body into the tissue, and how you feel the grain definitely goes more up on my right hand, going up the left side, goes more up. On the inside, it goes down. And you begin to feel that direction of the grain of the tissue. And you begin to impress in a way. And as you spiral, you go from 360 degrees in one plane to 360 by 360. So that's what you're feeling as the result of this touch in motion. Is it feels so integrating. So you take the superficial, you go to the area that was just worked. Okay, let's have this area that was just worked play well with the other kids in the park. So we encase them and we bring them into this spiral of communication. And suddenly that place that was on hold on the medial side of the leg begins to negotiate because of what the outside of the leg was able to do. So that's that technique. It has many, 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 many applications. I mean, I've taken that training and that concept all the way from working with tissue to working with tissue to bone to working with bone to bone to working with emotion to working with it's a principle that gets applied.
Right. That is seamlessly integrated with your work as the movement work is integrated into the body work. It's not a separate thing. It's like
Correct.
a different emphasis of the same continuum, so to speak, and how everything is related section to section, part to part, part to whole,
Yeah.
and how everything can be contacted so that you end up functioning as a whole. Like that was what was very evident to me when I first started receiving sessions, to feel that, oh, even though my neck was my focus, it was actually my legs that, that were such a controlling aspect of my pattern.
Yeah.
and
That's
and
something.
how and I felt so much more freedom than just having a session on my neck, for example. Like
Yeah.
the feeling that, oh, my neck is connected to all the rest of me, in the body work as it progressed.
You know, you watch an athlete, like particularly the Olympics provide such richness for us to see all these athletes in these different events. And right now I'm thinking of Summer Olympics. And you watch them and they will show them doing their particular activity. And then they will slow it down. And you go, look at that dance. Look at that dance. They're flipping over, turning their whole body over and rotating and landing like so. Okay. And when you do this, you know, people will say, golly, you guys all moves. New students sometimes they'll say, you guys all look so, I don't know, are you dancers or something? And everybody's moving in here. And it becomes this opportunity because as you change the weight from one foot to the other, and that foot to the hand, and that foot to the other hand, and that foot, both feet to both hands, and so on, it creates this sequential, again, spiraling forward or side or up or down, and creates this dance-like phenomenon. It isn't that we are dancing per se, we're just connecting the elements of the earth to our body, our history, our emotion, and moving through the layers. And they end up being like a dance, doing like a dance. And that dance, it may be quite subtle. It still is quite helpful in terms of sustaining the focus. Because sometimes when we get in there and this is stuck and we want to push harder, the effort that came into our body, creating this isometric contraction, and we're still going to be pushing, and the person says, okay, that really does hurt now. Okay, excuse me. And we go back to the idea, the 1 foot, 1 hand, da, 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 and we wave through the tissue, and suddenly what was holding us back moves more laterally so we can get in deeper and get the change done. So I don't know if that image was clear enough, but that is the idea that the way you use the body determines the success of the stroke.
Great. And the 201, I just want to touch on that a little bit more in the setup for, you know, the sequencing. So first we do the 101 to get the assessment of the body in stillness. In 201, the Aston movement introduction, you put in the forms that are the tools and the sequences that we learn, as well as going further into the assessment, not only in stillness, but in motion. And I think that's a unique aspect of a body worker training in your work, having some information about how to move, help people move better, even if it's by simple touch cues to help create awareness in someone's motion and to help get them to use their body in a way that's more supportive, let's say.
Well, the basic movement designs that are presented in that 201 allow students to learn how to teach people to find their neutral for the moment in sitting and in standing. And the students learn about that touch you're talking about, how to be helpful in guiding a person's movement so that they don't do an extreme strain on any area that you know that their back is sensitive in that lumbar area, for example. And so you're facilitating the movement with your hands, cueing the how much, the where, and when they do the movement, all of these pieces that make up a movement design. So you learn how to use the touch to guide, as well as your seeing skills, as well as you demonstrating. So it's so important that the teacher can be sitting beside their person, they don't have to have the most resilient body in the world. There are ways of teaching, even with our strong limitations. Even wearing a brace, you can begin through the way you learn to have this person be assisted by your movement. I can move my hand in a way and tap their back in a way that they will move into flexion, even though my support brace is not going to allow me to move into flexion. So the techniques for teaching come into that class also.
Oh, beautiful. Well, I think we have done lots of good conversation here, and we have gotten so much rich information. And I feel like even having this review as a practitioner gives me a deeper understanding of communicating this work. So thank you, Judith, for your time today.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, and this was lovely. I hope to do it again.
I'll look forward.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.